All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Smooth Operators Guide by Docs. This episode, we have Jacob Tanks, founder CEO of Relay. Jacob has an impressive background in AI, product management, and workflow automation. I mean, of course, Relay does automations using AI. And so, Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jacob. I'm the founder and CEO of Relay.app. I'll quickly share my personal background, which is probably going to be relevant to this conversation. Once upon a time, I was an AI researcher and I thought I was going to be a professor. I was pursuing a PhD in the AI lab at Stanford, and my research was always at the intersection of machine learning and social science problems, broadly speaking. So we studied things like how does information spread on Twitter? Or how can you predict from someone's LinkedIn profile what their career trajectory will look like? And then eventually I started working on AI and machine learning in the context of time management and decision making about our time. Like, why do we procrastinate? Why do we overestimate how available we will be in the future? Why do we underestimate how long things take? And then how can you build an AI system that understands our goals and our priorities and what we're trying to accomplish and then helps us find time for them? I ended up dropping out of my PhD to start my first company, which was called Timeful. And I was a co-founder along with my two academic co-advisors, one an AI professor named Yoav Shoham, and the other a behavioral economist named Dan Ariely. And what we built at Timeful was an AI-powered digital calendar that tried to help you spend time on what was important to you. And for most people, that meant increasing the amount of time that was represented on their calendar for their tasks, their habits, their projects, their goals, their personal priorities, rather than just the meetings and emails, which were other people's priorities that laid it up on their calendar. We can talk more about Timeful if you're interested. We were acquired by Google in
Right.
2015.
Yeah.
And then I spent 6 years at Google, where I led the product teams for Gmail, for Google Calendar, for the Google Workspace Developer Platform, and a variety of other products, all in the productivity and collaboration. And then in 2021, I left Google to start Relay.app, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the winding journey that led us to the product we have today. But what we have today is what we think is the best in class automation tool. It makes it easy to take any repeated piece of work that you do over and over again and
Yeah.
automate. You can think of us as a next gen alternative to Zapier with an improved model for how you can bring AI into your workflows and also a human in the loop to give you guidance and control. So I'm a productivity nerd. I've been in this space my whole career in a bunch of different capacities at startups, at large companies, on email products, automation products, calendar products, et cetera, all with the lens of AI, because that's where my academic background is.
Wow, that's fantastic. I myself actually love productivity in general as well. Like I remember, like just to avoid procrastination, right out of university, I took this course called Learning How to Learn. I mean, I was late to the class. I should have taken it in school, but then there was this teacher called Terence Wojnowski, if I'm not wrong. I mean, he talks a lot about like how to manage your time, how to do like zoom in and zoom out, Pomodoro, all these things, and yeah, totally. I can completely relate to this. This is very cool.
Yeah, and it's tough because productivity wisdom is usually told in the form of, well, I'm super successful and this is exactly what I do. So maybe if you do exactly this too, you can be successful someday too. That's how, getting things done, 7 habits of highly effective people, they're written in this very prescriptive manner of here's exactly what I do and why it's awesome. But different people have different priorities and different goals and different working styles. And so it's I have been unable to find the one system that works for everyone, but there are some general principles like write down what's important to you and then make sure you're spending enough time on that at the times when you're most likely to be able to achieve that successfully. Like for me, I'm a morning person. I do my most productive work in the morning. I write down my most important priorities. I schedule in the morning, and that's a system that works for me, but you may be a night owl and you might have a different cadence to your work based on the demands. So yeah, it's important to both adhere to, there are some set of principles that are true for a lot of people, but the exact way you implement it to make yourself, successful will be so different.
Interesting. Just zooming in a little bit about all the transitions that you've done so far, right? Like you transitioned from being a PhD student at Stanford and to founding your own company that is Stanford. which later got acquired by Google. And can you share what motivated these transitions and how each experience kind of shaped your approach to product development?
So the first transition from academic research to entrepreneurship was totally accidental. The way that happened was we were working on this academic research project where we were trying to study how an AI powered digital calendar could influence decision making about their time. And so we built this prototype calendar. I hired a bunch of undergrads to help us build it. We ran some studies. We wrote a couple academic papers. And after working on it for 2 years, my advisor came to me and he's like, hey, I think this thing we're doing, it's like way better suited to being a startup company and a product than to being an academic research project. Like, yeah, you could probably do it as an academic research project and get a PhD and be a professor if that's what you want to do. But like, I think based on the way you built up this team of undergrads and built this sort of product, like maybe I think that this other thing would be a better fit for you. And I was like, no, 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 I'm going to be a professor one day. And I sort of initially, like, it was a jarring change in my kind of career path that only after doing the startup for a few months did I realize, wow, yes, I am way better suited to working on a startup than doing academic research. So that happened accidentally. And I was lucky to have an academic advisor who had my best interest at heart and kind of knew my strengths and my skills and like where I was most likely to be successful, who helped me kind of realize like, actually, you should probably be doing that thing over there. You'd be better at that. And so that was sort of a key moment. The acquisition by Google was, I think, a more obvious decision for us, which was
Right.
we had built a really good product. It had 4.8 stars. It had solid traction with users. We were really proud of it, but we didn't really know how we were going to turn that product into an actual lasting business. Of course, that was our ambition when we raised venture capital and started the company. And the premise was like, if we can figure out how to really improve everyone's time management material, like there will be a huge business there because there's a lot of economic value you generate. But we just couldn't quite figure it out. And then maybe if we were doing that today, it would be more obvious that you build a subscription enterprise SaaS product, and maybe we could have a business that looks like Motion or Reclaim or Clockwise or one of the companies that's sort of in the same spiritual space that we were, but today rather than 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, that was actually not obvious. And so we reached a point where it's like, we have this product. We're really proud of it. We think it's good. We don't know how to turn it into a large business. And so Google kind of came along at the right time. They said, hey, we like this product that you've built. It turns out we have these other products called Gmail and Google Calendar that already have hundreds of millions of users at the time. Like, why don't you just take the good stuff that you built there and bring it to more users at scale in our product? And so it was sort of an obvious decision that was the right next
Right.
step for the company. And the experience was wild. Like, it turned out to be totally different from how we expected. Good, but in a totally different way. And then the transition from Google to starting my own company, that one was a much more deliberate transition that I planned for myself, which was like, I've spent 6 years like leading an organization in a large company, being a steward of this multi-billion user product or several of them. And I was just ready to go back to the very beginning, start a company. The pace of learning, the pace of growth, the freedom to experiment with new things. I had done it before. I knew that that's what I wanted to do next. And so that was like the one career choice in my life actually so far where I actually made a deliberate decision to go do something different. The others just kind of happened because of circumstances.
Right. Interesting. I mean, this is your second startup, right? Like second stint. And I mean, obviously, like you would have learned something out of like your acquisition by Google at Timeful and even your experience at Google, right? So what is that? Is there anything that, you would like to point out and anything that you would like to, like, that you're doing differently at Relay that you kind of did differently at Timeful?
I'm mostly making different mistakes this time. Some of the same ones, but
Right.
I'm mostly making new mistakes this time. I think if I had to boil down Timeful, the good and the bad, into one lesson, it's that we had a very good insight, which was that there are these other priorities that people need to spend time on, and we need to help them find time for them by getting them on. And when we applied that insight into a product, we made a couple of mistakes. One is we built something that was too generic, too horizontal, too hard to understand, too much driven by our own sort of like philosophical research and not enough by what users actually
Right.
experienced in the product and what they told us. And then the second was, as we were hunting for the next growth mechanism, we were thinking about how can we expand the surface area of the product to cover more use cases. So we started with tasks and events, and then we added habits, and then we added projects, and then the next thing we were going to do when we were acquired, we were going to add an Android app. We were an iPhone only app at the time. We were going to add an Android app. We were going to add a web app. And we had a really interesting meeting. A guy named Joe Kraus, who was an investor at Google Ventures at the time. He's since gone on to do a few other things. And
Right.
what he said was really poignant. He basically said, like, I've never seen a company that has, traction but not yet product market fit, which is where we were. We had traction but not yet product market fit. I've never seen a company get there by expanding the surface area of features that they provide. Because there's always this hope that's just like, if we just add the one more magical feature, then it will click. But
Right.
probably the right answer is that your core is not quite right yet. And so adding some additional tangential feature is not going to fix the core that doesn't have product market fit, but that you really need to iterate on the core to get it right. And I think that's the thing that we've done best at Relay.app so far, which is instead of jumping into adding a bunch of incremental features, we really made sure that like the core automation mechanics were delightful and users loved them and the product was growing naturally. And then we could say, and now we can add on this cool new AI capability that will further drive growth. And now we can add on this cool additional human in loop capability that can further drive growth. But until you find product market fit, it's more about subtraction and refinement of the core rather than adding feature scope. So that was a mistake that we made at Timeful that I think we remedied at Relay.app. There's another mistake that we made at Timeful that we made again at Relay.app and then only remedied too late. So let me quickly share that one. And again, different people's experiences differ. So you may have another guest who tells you the exact opposite of what I'm going to say, but this is what happened to us. At Timeful, we made this pitch about the future of the digital calendar. And a very common response from VCs and other people who have been in the space was like, man, we've seen so many alternative digital calendars. None of them have become a multi-billion-dollar lasting standalone company. There just seems to be something about this category that structurally cannot yield that kind of lasting success. And we were like, oh, they don't get it. Like, they don't get how smart we are. They don't see how cool and innovative we are. And then after a few years, I was like, oh no, maybe, we did our battle with the category and lost also. And because we were very focused, I was very keen on, we're going to create a new category. We're going to build something new that's never been done before. And we're going to bring that to market in a totally new and different way from any successful business that exists today. And then with Relay, we kind of started with the same mentality, which was there's a problem people are facing. Their work is scattered across many different tools. They're struggling to keep track of everything they need to do. They're struggling to communicate the right things to their team. They're wasting a bunch of their time in busy work. And so initially, for the first year and a half of the company, all of our product ideas were sort of category creation concepts. We're going to build an automated to-do list that identifies things you need to do from across all your tools, or we're going to build a live updating contextual knowledge base that takes your Notion and your Confluence and whatever else you're using and keeps them up to date over time. A different kind of live docs from the live docs that I think you're working on.
Right. Yeah.
But sort of in the same like spirit. And then we thought, even when we started working on what became our current product, we thought, there's automation tools like Zapier over here. There's task management tools like Asana and Monday over here. We're going to create a new category in between them that's optimized for repeated processes that combine an automated element with an element that requires a human in the loop. And more power to the category creators. Like, if there weren't people who were capable of doing that, we wouldn't have any categories. But I found that I personally was unable, like, it was so hard to create a new category. And then as soon as we started positioning ourselves as within the automation category, but innovating in how we brought in AI and innovating in how we brought in human in the loop, it made the conversation a million times easier. Because what I had to relearn again for the second painful time is way easier to explain someone how you're different and better and more powerful and more flexible than something that they already know and purchase. It's way harder to explain like what you are and what you're for and why they should buy you and why they should use you. And so that was a mistake that, we made again for the first year and a half of Relay. And then when things really started to click, it's because we said, this is a category where there's a known pain and a known user problem. And the category has a bunch of opportunities for innovation, but let's start by anchoring on something people already understand and know they need, and then use that as the base or the springboard for the future evolution.
I can totally agree and relate to this. Like, I myself have founded a startup in the past, and whenever it is like a groundbreaking, like category creation idea, it's gonna be like, hey, it's gonna be really, really tough. That's the truth. I mean, distribution is like super hard in like category creating products. For example, Salesforce was like not a category creating product, but then it just played in the existing category and did like mastered distribution somehow.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
and they took advantage of a technological inflection, which is like something that I
yeah,
think has happened with many successful companies, which is like, hey, yeah, you used to run your CRM in this like annoying on-prem, you get a CD mailed to you every year
yeah.
way, and they would have all these billboards in San Francisco that said no software, and that didn't mean that Salesforce was not a software product. Of course, it's a software product, but like they meant you're not going to get that disk that you have to install. It's just going to work in the cloud, and you're always going to have the latest version. And so like they didn't create the CRM category, but they created the cloud-based
Cloud.
CRM version of that experience.
Yeah, if you're like somehow 10% better than the existing competition, you kind of have you already take a slice from the TAM,
Yeah,
right?
and some people say you need to be 10x better, not 10% better. I think it depends a lot on what market you're in and what makes you different and better of how you can kind of cut through the clutter. And this is one that people will love to debate, like, is it good enough just to have an easier to use and better product? Is it good enough to have a cheaper product? Do you need one 10x feature or a totally rethought experience? And like, at least as far as I'm aware, there are basically successful examples of all versions of those. Like, for example, a really hot company right now is Linear. We use Linear as our issue tracking
Oh
system.
yeah,
Um, and if you ask a Linear user like us, what is a specific 10x feature that's better than Jira? I can't point to a specific feature that Linear has that's better than Jira. I'm just like, I just like it better. It looks nicer, it's faster, it works better, it's cleaner. Like, and so that, for all the people who write blog posts saying like ease of use is not good enough, it's like, isn't it? Like maybe in some context it is good enough. And in some
yeah,
context it's probably not good enough. Um, and so I, take all generic startup wisdom with a grain of salt, of course. But that was my experience, at least, was like before product market fit, you have to simplify, 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 and refine the core until it really works before you add feature scope. And then, second, for me personally, anchoring off of an existing need in an existing category was a way better springboard to innovation than trying to, convince people of something totally new from the beginning.
yeah, totally. I mean, innovation can happen in any way, right? Like innovation through design, innovation through development, innovation through, for example, AI right now, right? So that brings me to my next question. Like you've led AI-inspired features across Google Workspace and created AI-driven solutions at Thankful and Relay. What kind of like drove you towards this? What are the key factors to consider when integrating AI into productivity tools?
So, probably the most important and most deeply held belief that I have about useful product experience with AI is that the human in the loop user experience is at least as important as the underlying model quality. um, and so, for example, with Smart Compose, which was the interactive autocomplete that we worked on in Gmail back in like 2018, 2019, and it looks so simplistic now, but at the time it was quite a big breakthrough, was, we could take the exact same underlying model. And if you changed the way you used italics or ghost text or tab to complete or enter to complete or click to complete, like getting the UI right turned the feature from unlaunchable to really lovable with the same exact underlying model. And of course, as underlying models get more capable, you expand the scope of what features you can deliver to users, but you never lose the responsibility of delivering them in a really well considered, well tested user experience that makes human in the loop oversight really easy. Because again, like I'm a believer in all this AI stuff. I've been working on it my whole career, but like I still have not seen many high stakes use cases today where you can feel totally confident to trust an AI agent without some human oversight.
Right.
And so this is sort of like the foundational belief behind all of the work that we did at Google and also at Relay.app, which is like just as important as the power and flexibility that you imbue the AI with is the mechanism by which you keep the human in control, to add personal details, add a touch of context that the AI might not have, to confirm what the AI has done is right until you build trust. So that's like the big thing about how we've approached all of our AI steps in a way that I think differentiates us from others on the market. Like, it's not that we don't believe AI is getting more and more powerful. It's not that we don't believe it can take on more and more use cases. It's not that we don't believe that agents will eventually be highly autonomous and very capable. It means that the path to get there is going to require a really delicate dance between what the AI does and how the human corrects, adjusts, and oversees it. That's like the big learning.
So true. I mean, so whenever my copywriter is telling that, hey, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm like, hey, like, I mean, you can use ChatGPT, but then it's going to be like you use it for an outline, or you can use it for like a boilerplate. Instead of looking at a blank screen, it can be a great starting point, but it cannot be a finished product. You obviously need to edit. You obviously need to fill in the gaps, and human
Yeah,
intervention
and
is like
and
so important.
yeah, and what we've seen is that the dimensions that matter are: what are the stakes of the use case? What is the AI model good at today? And what is the nature of human touch that is required? So I can give you a few examples. So let's say you have a use case which is: take a meeting transcript that's generated by your favorite meeting recording system, and you want to summarize it and automatically share it with your team over Slack. That is something that you can fully automate today because it is a low stakes use case. Who cares if the
Right.
Slack summary is a little bit wrong? You can go look at the full transcript. You can go ask someone. Like, it's a low stakes use case. The AI models are pretty good at this today. Like, they're pretty good at taking a long form piece of text and summarizing it into a couple paragraphs. And there's not that much of a personal touch that's required. Like, yeah, maybe I could add some additional personal commentary on the tone of the meeting, or, Ani and Jacob disagreed about this, but like a generic note taker will do a pretty good job. If you
Right.
contrast that with another use case, which is writing a personalized customer onboarding email to a high stakes enterprise client, that has very different attributes along those three dimensions. Number one, it's a way higher stakes use case. Like, if you mess up this onboarding email to your high stakes enterprise client, like, that could sink your whole business. So the stakes are super high. Number two, AI models aren't great at that today for a variety of reasons. They may not have all the context they need about the customer. They may not have the personal communication style of exactly how you would write to this exact customer based on your past relationship. It may come up like, with ChatGPT fluff, like the stuff you mentioned with the copywriter. And then third, there's probably some offline personal context and personal touch that you want to add to that email that an AI system would have no way to know about because it was based on body language in a meeting, or was based on something that was said in an in-person interaction that wasn't captured anywhere, or it's just something in the back of your mind. And so that's a use case where you need a pretty heavy human in the loop because of those three elements. It's very high stakes. AI models can't do it that well today, and there's a high degree of personal touch. And so any use case you have, you can map along those three axes, and that can decide where you want to be on the spectrum from fully automated to fully manual with a lot of wiggle room in between. For example, with a blog post, often we've seen that the best balance is the human generates the idea for the blog post, the AI
Right.
generates some bullets or some ideas or some brainstorming. The human then, crafts those into a full draft, and then the AI goes and reviews it to make sure the spelling is good, the grammar is good, that it complies with the style guide and the voice guide and the tone guide and all that. And then the human publishes it. And that's like a very common pattern of like human AI multi-step collaboration where each player is doing what they're best at.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I agree, and that's really cool. Like to consider like three different dimensions to see whether like how much can you actually automate, and how much like should it be like completely manual. Uh, just that leads to my next question: like, how much of AI do you use in your day to day, and like in general, like what all are the like tasks that you use to like automate and use AI with?
Yeah, so I would say right now, I so there's kind of a few different models of AI. You have chatbots like ChatGPT, you have in-product copilot experiences like GitHub Copilot, and you have AI running in repeated automations like we do in Relay app. My
Right.
usage bias is towards the third because that's what we're building and that's what fits best into my workflow. But I'll give you some examples. One example is categorizing support tickets to give us product insights. So every time an email gets sent into support, we have an AI system automatically categorize it. Is it a bug? Is it a usability issue? Is it a feature request? Is it a question about a use case? And then we can keep track of all of that in a spreadsheet. And then we can ask like for some automated insights of like, what kind of feature requests did we see in the past week, or what kind of bugs did we see? Is there any pattern to them? That's been super valuable. Another thing that I use AI for is summarizing long form documents and giving me, bite-sized versions of them, and I can decide to dig deeper, whether it's a summary of a meeting that I've missed, a summary of a blog post a competitor has written. You get the idea. That happens a lot. And then also, in content creation, like to make sure the spelling, the grammar, the tone, the style guide is all good. Those are sort of my common use cases. We've actually been doing a couple fun things recently where, content is sort of our big go-to-market play, where we want to give people a lot of resources
Right.
that can help them figure out what they should automate or how they should connect their tools. And we've been playing around with not just auto-generated tutorials, but auto-generated videos where you can fully auto-generate like the narrator and the voiceover, and even in some cases like the screenshots and screen captures. And that's an example of doing something that like would not have been possible a year ago.
Right.
Just because the quality of image and voice generation is getting better so quickly.
100%. I mean, the other day I got a phone call like from, I think it was an SDR from a startup or like some kind of a product. It sounded just like a human being. I mean, at the end of the call, I realized that it was an AI. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, the way it's evolving, it's
Yeah,
becoming like
it's
more and
cool,
more
cool,
closer to
cool,
human.
cool, cool slash scary slash annoying, depending on how it's applied.
Yeah,
Like with any tool, it can be applied in really cool ways and really damaging
there
ways.
are always bad
Um,
actors. Yeah.
but yeah, for me, the most impactful way I found to build AI into my work is in these sort of repeated, ongoing processes so that it can do work for me while I'm sleeping. That's like the dream, that it can do all the annoying parts of my job for me while I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jacob. So I mean, just quickly going towards like you started like your career starting a startup, and then you went to Google, and then you started a game, right? I mean, you've been in the leadership role for a while now. So how has your leadership style evolved from your early days at Timeful to now leading Relay? Like, what are your key principles and like some like what are the things that like guided like your leadership ethos in general?
There's a few things that I think have always been just true for me personality wise. Um, like transparency and intellectual honesty. I had even, when I was 22 years old, which is like, if we're all looking at a thing and we all see that it's not working, no one respects the leader who gets up on stage and says, rah, rah, it's working, when everyone can see that it's not working. um, and so I've always tried to be very honest with myself and honest with the team about like, hey, this thing we tried didn't work. Here's why, and here's what we're doing about it. As opposed to just always beating the rah rah, we're amazing drum, or like pretend you didn't see that failure. That's been true of my leadership style throughout. I think over time, over the last 15 years, I've transitioned from my main quality being energy and enthusiasm to my main quality being sort of like experience and perspective. And so, when I was 23 years old starting Timeful, I had no experience. I have no perspective. And so my leadership style was very much based on energy and enthusiasm, which is like, this is such a cool thing that should exist in the world. Like, here's all these amazing ideas we have. Here's how we brought them to life. Here's how people are reacting to it. Like, go, 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 go. And it was very much sort of like a lead from the front, inspire with energy. Like, if I'm this excited about it, surely they should be this excited about it too. Whereas I'm a very different person now. I've seen much more at startups, my own, others, large companies, my own, others, that now I still think I have the energy and the enthusiasm and the passion for what we're doing. And I think it does shine through to the team, but it's wrapped in a layer of, and here's how this relates to the world around us and what I've seen before. And that's been very stabilizing, because I'll give you an example. Like, every startup has their first year or two where they're wandering in the desert before things click. Some
Of
people
course.
it clicks faster, some it clicks slower, but like no one just like wakes up and their first idea works perfectly. And so the first time around, I just sort of powered through that phase with energy. I was just like, the problem is so big, we're gonna figure it out. Like, like let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. Always on to the next thing, the next opportunity, the next piece of excitement. Whereas this time around, I still had the excitement, but I was more measured. And you know, when we would do an experiment that wouldn't work, instead of being discouraged, I would just say like, this is the process. This is how it works in an early stage startup. We're gonna try things. We're gonna learn from them. Not everyone is gonna work. Here's what happened to this company you've all heard of before they became famous. Here's what happened to this company you've all heard of before they became famous. Just to give people like comfort that I'm a seasoned steward who knows how to navigate this challenge and run the company. And that's something I can do now that I couldn't do 15 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to the place where you guys are at Relay right now, you obviously jumped through a lot of hoops and a lot of hurdles and a lot of failures and experiences, and that has just like kind of shaped you to where you are right now. Are there any important ones that you'd like to point out? Are there anything that are like starkly different, any unobvious tactic that you've used that you'd like to share?
I don't know that I have anything that's not obvious. Um,
Perfect.
but talk to users, blah 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 blah. I
Right.
would say
Yeah.
the most important tactic for us and for me, given that we came from our previous roles, we're all working on a large product at a large company where there's a major tendency to analyze and reanalyze and debate before doing anything. And so, what has been really helpful to us is to just internalize that action creates information, and that like doing something that enables us to learn from users will be way more effective than debating it in the abstract ourselves. But I would put that in the category of obvious. The thing that's maybe less obvious is I come from a product and engineering background. So does our whole team. None of us have ever done marketing before. And so we needed to
Right.
like in January, basically 7 6 7 months ago, we had to approach marketing with a total beginner's mind of like how do you make people aware of the thing that you've built. And the book that was really really helpful for me there was a book called Traction, which basically
Yeah.
outlines a structured approach to here are all the different ways that tech startups typically get customers. Some of them do content based SEO, some of them host live events, some of them do outbound sales. And here are some dimensions of the type of product that you're working on that may make it a better fit for one channel or another channel, but like you're probably not going to know till you try. And so the right approach is to have sort of a disciplined methodology where you try a few channels at a time, you pick the one that works, and then probably once you find one channel that works, in our case it's SEO, that can get you to like your first product market fit milestone. And I think that that book more than anything really helped me demystify early stage startup marketing and get us off the ground.
Interesting. Interesting. Because like from what I can think of, your biggest competitor is Zapier in the market right now. And I remember Zapier having this really cool programmatic SEO tactic. So how are you planning, if you don't mind sharing, like that level of depth or that level of whatever impact they've had? Is there anything innovative that you guys are working on that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So, and this is exactly what we were unsure about. Like, on the one hand, they did so well with programmatic SEO, and we're in the same category. So, maybe some of the structural factors that help them, the large breadth of integrations, the long tail queries, like maybe that would help us too. On the other hand, they already ranked number one for everything. So, we just had to try it. And here's what we found. First is that even if we couldn't rank number one, ranking two, three, four, five for some of these product combinations like integrate Gmail and Notion, like that already can get us a material amount of traffic. And then second, we found that there was something sort of missing in their programmatic SEO strategy where you get to these programmatic landing pages and they don't really give you that much information about how to actually set up the thing successfully for yourself. And so we built this class of auto-generated tutorials that show you step by step. Here's how you configure your Gmail trigger. Here's how you configure your AI extract step. Here's how you configure your Notion, create page step. And those now rank one for a bunch of more detailed queries in this sort of like how to do X category. And so I think but we didn't know any of this until we did the experiment. We didn't know what the gaps were in their approach. We didn't know if we'd be able to compete and rank for common keywords. And so I guess my main takeaway from that experience is like, don't be afraid of competitors. Just don't be afraid of competitors. Like, um, just because someone else has done something successfully doesn't mean that you can't do it successfully also, or that you can't be better along a couple of specific um, dimensions. That's like, like I mentioned, like my big takeaway from Timeful was you need to have a product market fit. You need to have product market fit in the core of the product before you add features. My number one takeaway from Relay app is don't be afraid of competitors. Run towards competition, not away from it, because like competition means there's a problem and people care about it. And like probably the competitor isn't doing everything perfectly. Probably there's going to be ways where you can do better, both on product and on marketing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we should all be not too scared of the big competitors out there.
Yeah, and
So,
we shouldn't
yeah,
underestimate them. Like I really it really rubs me the wrong way when people speak negatively, unfairly negatively about the incumbent in their space. Like you'll never hear me saying something like Zapier is terrible or they're such a bad company. Like it's a good product. It's a good company. They paved the way for this whole category. I have a huge amount of respect for both what they've built in the past and what they're doing now, and I'm keeping a close eye on it. But that's respect. It's not fear. And they're like, you need to strike the right balance. It shouldn't be respect. It shouldn't be fear, nor should it be underestimation. But like respect, but identifying opportunities to do better is like the right, the balance that works for us.
I keep telling this to my designer often, so whenever we see a competitor like Hex or like DeepNote launching a new feature, then we are like immediately like, oh, okay, we just thought of building that. We don't know what to do now. And I was like, dude, just get inspired. Don't be threatened by it. Like
Yeah.
probably they're doing it because they did enough research about it. How can we do that better? That can be like a better attitude.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And competitors will do things for all sorts of reasons that may or may not
Yeah.
be relevant to you. And so, like playing Kremlinology to try to figure out why someone did something is probably not a great use of your time. Like, look at the feature, analyze it. If it's awesome, figure out what you can learn from it. If it's not awesome, don't worry about why they decided to do
Yeah.
it. Just build your own awesome thing.
100%. So you mentioned that AI just needs some level of human touch points. Depends on what kind of task is in hand and what kind of output is required from it. So how do you envision AI transforming productivity tools in the next 5 or 10 years? Is it going to be fully automated, or is it going to still have human touch points? What is your take on that?
I always think there will be human touch points. Just the nature of those will change as AI models become more capable in more tasks. And so, broadly speaking, I think everything we do in an end user app will be significantly assisted by a copilot. Whether
Right.
it's helping us write an email, or helping us compose a doc, or helping us copy edit something, or helping us automatically label the support ticket, like every product is going to have to build accelerators that are powered by AI, and that's just going to be an expectation we have of all tools going forward, I believe. Chatbots, I'm not really sure about. I'm not sure what their long-term role will be. Like there are some use cases where a chatbot is great if you're like doing research or interrogating some
Right.
data, but they chatbots still have this downside of like you don't know what to ask. You have to remember to go there, and so I'm actually not sure of the future of chatbots. Like I'm hopeful that they'll be really useful for a class of invoked actions and research use cases, but there's major user experiences challenges to overcome to get there. And then my bet, which is sort of self-serving, is that the most impactful way we're all going to use AI is we're all going to have these like automation assistants running in the background for us that are confirming with our meeting attendees that they're going to show up and categorizing our support requests and copy editing all of the blog posts we've written and just like taking all of the sort of like mundane work we have to do and just doing it automatically for us in an increasingly capable way. Maybe someday even being fully autonomous agents that do things, some class of tasks with no human in the loop, but there will always be a human in the loop sort of like adjustment and training period as the agent gets comfortable with what it needs to do.
Right. So, Jacob, from whatever answers I've got, like you clearly are a great thinker, right? Not just like in a product level, but in like a more deeper level. Like coming from all the way from doing PhD to starting a startup to going to Google and then again starting a startup. Like that's a lot of resilience in there. And I would like to know, like, have there been any notable mentors or influential figures in your career that have, like, significantly impacted? Like, I have a few. I'm sure you have like a few or
Yeah.
even like a lot
Um,
you have learned from.
yes, very, very much so. I think, at each phase, I've had a couple mentors that have extended throughout my entire career. Like my probably most important overall mentor is Yoav Shoham. He was my academic advisor. He was my co-founder at Timeful. He, worked with me at Google. He's now an advisor to our company, Relay App. And he's the kind of the single person that has been there throughout the entire course of my career. And he's the one who originally, helped me get into entrepreneurship and kind of taught me everything I know about the game. So I have him and then a couple of other sort of like long-standing mentors that are on sort of like my personal board of directors. You hear that phrase thrown around sometime. Another one is my engineering counterpart for much of my career at Google, which is a guy named Kevin Smilak, who kind of taught me how to get things done within Google and taught me how to operate at scale when I was this like naive startup guy taking over Gmail with a billion users. And he's also in that sort of like long-term personal board of directors role where like I go to him with every big life decision. But then there are other people along the way. Like we have amazing investors in Relay App, whether it's, Ali Partovi and the team at Neo, Sandia, who was at Khosla when she invested, Christina, who was at A16Z and Zia when they invested. And at Timeful, we also had, Keith Raboy, who was at Khosla at the time, was our mentor at Timeful. So I've had, at every step, there have been critical mentors who might be investors, might be board members, might be peers. And then there have been also these sort of like longer threads through my life. The last thing that I should note is like, it is so, so valuable to have a set of other startup founders who are either a couple years ahead of you or a couple years behind you or anyone in between. So there's a lot of those people that I'm really leaning on right now. Like a guy named Zach Lloyd is the founder of Warp.dev. They're a couple years ahead of us. A friend of mine, Boaz Hecht, is the founder of 8Flow. They're maybe a few months behind us. And then there's a bunch more that are in between. And it's so valuable to check in on like, oh, that person who's a year ahead that's now confronting this problem. Like, that you're now confronting a problem that they've already solved. How did they do it? Can they help you? And then it's also useful to talk to the people that are 6 months behind, because when they confront a problem that you've already passed somehow, it often is a moment for self-reflection where you can figure out, oh yeah, that's how we solved that problem, but maybe next time I would do it a little differently or better or this way. And so, obviously if you have like long-standing career mentors, continue to cultivate those relationships. Also, it's important to have situational mentors who are like very involved in your current project or your current company that have the context on what you need to do. And the last class of mentor would be like find people like you that are a few years ahead or a few years behind or anywhere in between that you can kind of like constantly lean on for experiential advice.
Wow, I'm like more than grateful that you considered me in the list.
Sorry?
So I'm more than grateful that you're considering me in the list.
Yeah.
Right. I have one final question, Jacob. So this is a rapid fire round. So I just want to like get a peek into like the tools that you use like every day. So
Yes.
this is like a four-part question. The first one is like, what is a tool that you would consider as your Swiss Army knife?
You're gonna make me be self-promotional and say Relay.app. Because most of what I'm trying to automate in a flexible way, I do with our own product. But if I have to give a non-self-serving answer, I would say Slack is also a very valuable Swiss Army knife that we can use for communication, for sharing information, for updates, for automating actions. So those are probably the two I would pick, Slack and Relay.
Of course, Slack is evolving like every day. I can see
Yeah.
them having a Kanban board now. I just discovered it the other day.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, is there any tool that you cannot live without in your stack? Like super essential. Is that again related to that?
So I won't repeat Slack. I'll still say Gmail. As much as
Right.
everyone will talk about the death of email, like it is still such a critical mechanism for interacting with the outside world and letting people interact with you that like couldn't run the business without it.
Right. If you would like to name like one undiscovered gem or a few undiscovered gems in your stack.
Undiscovered. I'll name a cool one. We just started
Yeah.
using synesthesia to auto-generate AI-powered videos. I don't know how undiscovered they are. They're kind of hypey, but it's incredibly cool and very, very, very powerful. And I think it's actually going to be really useful to us in practice. And then other than that, I would say all the tools we really rely upon are pretty discovered. GitHub, Figma,
Right.
Linear, Notion, etc.
Got it. And I mean, this can be the same probably to this previous one. So, is there anything that is new to your stack? Like that's just added and that has added a lot of value to you?
Yeah, the area where we're investing most right now, because SEO and content is our big play, we're always looking for tools that can help us refine our content, produce better content. So, for example, we've just been playing around with this tool called Phrase, Frase, that basically, you give it a web page and you give it a page and sort of what keywords it's trying to rank for, and they help you identify opportunities to create information gain over the other items on the page and make sure that your page structure and everything is SEO optimized, because that's kind of like an inbuilt AI scoring function. And that's been pretty useful for like boosting our page quality.
Amazing. Okay. That brings me to the end of my list, Jacob. And one final thing, like, would you like to share something to the rest of the audience, or like, and also like, where can people find you in general? Twitter, LinkedIn, any blog
Yeah, I have
publications?
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. My Twitter presence is very small. I'm more active on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me there. And then if you sign up for Relay.app and you email support@Relay.app, there's a good chance I'll be the person answering your support email. So always like to interact with users when they're running into issues with the product.
Amazing. Thank you for joining, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ani. This was fun. Talk
Awesome.
to you soon.